beautiful people, and welcome. In this video, we will be discussing how to use the method of completing the square while solving a quadratic equation. Okay, disclaimer time, I am human. Mistakes can and will happen. Just let me know where they occur so that way we can both learn from my mistake. Also, if you hear anything in the background, that is Miss Silvana being a happy little kitty in the background. All right, let's get started. Let's warm up a little bit, okay? So I would like for you to solve the quadratic equation. And I'm not telling you what method to use, just solve it. So what I'm giving you is x squared plus 8x plus 16 equal to 0. Now we know it's an equation because it does have an equal sign. So whenever you're told to solve or evaluate and you notice something that is equal, then your answer must also have an equal sign, meaning you are solving for the variable. So your variable is going to equal a numeric value because a variable represents an unknown value. Okay. So depending on what method you choose, I'm going to choose to factor. If you guys remember in semester number 1, how great it felt to factor things. So you may factor these in different ways. I'm going to choose the diamond method. And when I do diamond, I always put a little dot up here plus here just to help remind me what I'm doing. So here I am multiplying. This is what I'm asking myself. What are two values that add up to 8, but also multiply to 16? And those two values, I have 4 plus 4 is 8. 4 times 4 is 16. And I don't have to do anything other than that because my coefficient for my leading term is 1. So we're done there. So then that means I have x plus 4 and x plus 4 as my factors, which means I have x plus 4 squared. I'm going to square root both sides to get rid of that square. So I have x plus 4 equal to 0. I'm going to subtract 4 both sides. So I have x is equal to negative 4. So that is how we're solving the quadratic equation. So let's do another example. All right, our example is x squared plus 6x minus 27. And again, our objective is to solve. So just like before, I'm going to use the diamond method. I am noticing that this has a coefficient of 1. So two numbers that multiply together to give me negative 27, and then add together to give me 6. So then this is where you start playing around with your factors of these numbers. So factors of 27, what is it, 3, 9? Is there anything else that can multiply together to give me 27? I mean, 1 and 27. That's about it. So none of these combinations. So 9 and 3. Oh, can that give me 6? I think it can. So they have to add up to be 6 and multiply to be 27. Okay, so let's see here. Negative. So I have negative 3 and 9. Doing a happy dance right now. So then we're doing negative 3 and positive 9. Okay, but then what do? Then we're going to set both of them equal to 0. Now, you don't have to do this. You can always, if you're in my class, you can always just start asking yourself, what does x have to be in order for x to be 0? In order for the parentheses to equal 0, I misspoke there. So what does x have to be in order for this to be 0? That would be a positive 3. What does x have to be in order for this to be 0? That would be negative 9. But this is the way we are actually solving it mathematically if we don't want to ask ourselves that question. Okay, so we have solved it. So x is equal to 3 and negative 9. All right, let's do another one. These are fun, aren't they? Just kidding. All right. Example 3. Let's do another one. Let's work with example number 2, but I'm actually going to now introduce completing the square. So let's say we have x squared is, let's rewrite it exactly the same way. I understand you can factor this the regular way, the diamond method, but I'm actually going to show you what the steps are to use completing the square, excuse me. I just want to show you that it does give you the same answer. Okay, step number 1 is you're going to isolate the constant. So you're going to move all the variables to one side, your constants to the other. So move constant to the other side. I'm thinking by IM1 method, but you're going to do by opposite operation, by undoing. Let's call it undoing. So you want your variables on one side and you want your constants on the other side. So let's do that. Let's write our steps and also do our work together. So I'm going to add 27. This is what I mean by undoing. I'm going to undo a negative 27 by adding 27. So I have x squared plus 6x. So both of these have a variable in them. And then my constant is 27. It's on the other side. I'm going to put it equals here. So I've done that. Step number 1. Step number 2 is optional. I'm still going to write it, but it is optional. You're going to set up to complete the square. Okay, what that means is what you're going to do is you're just going to create some space. So you're going to have an area here, and you're going to have an area here that you're going to fill in with something. So I'm going to write 2 here, and I'm going to write 1 for our steps. So here's step number 1. Step number 2, you're going to set up to complete the square. Step number 3, this is the most important step. So you're going to add b divided by 2 squared to both sides. All right, so what is b? So here's step 3. Here is your b value, whatever this is. Whatever this is. Now, some of you are going to ask, does it matter if this value is positive or negative? No. It does not matter if that value is positive or negative because you are going to square it, and a negative times a negative will still give you a positive value. So, b divided by 2 squared, what is that? That is 6 divided by 2 squared, which is 3 squared, which is 9. So I'm going to take that 9 and I'm going to go back up and I'm going to add it to both sides. Remember, we want our equation equal. So if you do one thing to one equation, you must do the exact same thing to the other side of the equation, or else it will not remain equal. We need it to be the same equation that we started with. All right, so that's step number 3. Step number 4 is simplify And I'm gonna combine two steps. I'm gonna say simplify / factor. Okay. If you are in my class, you know one thing that is very true. Mathematicians are lazy. So what we mean by that is we're not clever at naming things. And if we can take shortcuts, we will take shortcuts. So when we are completing the square and we're factoring, we want a perfect square. That's our goal. Our objective is to get a perfect square. So let's write that down. Our goal is to create a perfect square. How does that look like? A plus B squared. That's our goal. We want, after we factor, we want A plus B squared. So let's do that. I'm going to rewrite this here. So step number 4, I'm going to simplify. So I have x squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to whatever 27 plus 9 is. That is, in fact, 36. That's me simplifying. Now I'm going to factor. 36, we're leaving alone. We're factoring only our left-hand side. Let me move this over so I can shift this up. There we go. So we're going to factor this side. If you have done completing the square properly, this will always, 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 always be a perfect square. And even though that you have done all of this magical work to create this, I'll show you a hint. It's always going to be x. And do you see this value here, this 3 that we squared? We're going to bring it down here. And that's always going to work. 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. That is your perfect square. After this, we're going to continue to solve. So I'm going to do step number 5. Solve for x, and we're almost done. Okay, square root. X plus 3 is equal to, please don't make this mistake. It's going to be plus or minus. Plus or minus the square root of 36, which is 6. I was so worried about you making a mistake that I made a mistake. So plus or minus 6, so that means I'm running out of space. I'm going to do it here. You have two equations. You have x plus 3 is equal to positive 6. Your second equation, x plus 3 is equal to negative 6. So I'm going to subtract 3 both sides. So what do we have equal? We have x is equal to 3, and we have x is equal to negative 9. Those are our two solutions to our quadratic equation. Now remember, this was us completing the square to this quadratic equation, but we already did solve it using the diamond method, and our answers are exactly the same. They should match as long as we follow a step. Now, let's move on. Let's not move on. Let's move to step number 1 again. And I want to say something here because I don't think I mentioned it. So another thinking bubble. Your leading coefficient must be 1. So what I mean by that is the number out in front here, in front of your x squared, must be 1. If it is not 1, you have to divide out. I'm trying to find a highlighter here. Let me find it. This must be 1. If it is not 1, we must divide, and that's going to be example number 2. Let's do that. The steps are going to be exactly the same. I'm not going to be rewriting those steps. We're just going to work with example number 2 and then call it good. So example number 2, we have 2x squared plus 8x minus 12 is equal to 0. Again, we are solving this using completing the square. Step number 1 is move everything over, but you must have x equals 1. Now, doing this step doesn't matter if you do it after step number 1 or before step number 1, because all you're going to do is divide. But let's do it. Step number 1 was move everything over. So I have 2x squared plus 8x is equal to positive 12. Again, notice that I have this 2 out in front. Can't have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by 2 every single term. You can't just divide this section. You have to divide every single term. So then what do we have? We have x squared plus 4x is equal to, what is this, 6? Now we get to continue with step number 2. Step number 2 is making that room. So we have x squared plus 4x plus something is equal to 6 plus something. What is that something? You're taking your b value. In this case, it is 4. 4 divided by 2. Square that number. You're putting that number here. And you're also going to put that number back here. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So simplify and factor. So we're going to simplify first. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we're going to factor again, always. This will always, always, always be a perfect square if you've done your completing the square correctly. X is always going to be there, and we're going to add. So 2 numbers multiply to get 4, but also add to get 4. Again, your value that you're putting here is always going to be that number before you squared it. So whatever this number is, before you squared it to put it here for 4, that's what's going to go in here. Okay, so we're going to move on. Square root, both sides. Don't forget your plus and minus. So x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus whatever square root of 10 is. I'm leaving it as a square root of 10 because I don't know what that is. I don't recommend using calculators for this. Keep your answer as exact as possible. You're not doing much with it, so leave it. So now we're doing 2 steps here. We are going to add and we're going to subtract. So here's our positive 10, and then here's our negative 10. And by that, I mean root 10. That kind of looks like a negative, so let me rewrite that. There you go. So now we're subtracting. Subtracting. Since we don't know what the exact value of root 10 is, we're going to say x is equal to, you can say root 10 minus 2, you can say negative 2 plus root 10. I'm going to say negative 2 plus root 10. And then, let me scooch that forward. Here we have x is equal to negative 2 plus negative root 10. And again, these are icky answers. They're not pretty answers, but that's okay because all we care about is solving for x. And there you have it. You solved for x and you're done. That pretty much wraps up this video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the steps for completing this square are helpful. We're going to continue moving on to circles in our next video, so go ahead and look out for that video. Like, share, subscribe, and press that little notification bell. I appreciate every single one of you for watching my video. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.